Okay, it's Reg here again. Basically what I'm going to try to do this time is I build myself a rover. And I had a rover on Mars at one point, but we had an incident and things didn't work out well for the rover. So I've rebuilt the rover, which is what we have here. And I'll show you I'll go through some of the components of it in just a second here. But it's been rebuilt in an attempt to try to get this a working rover on Mars again. Make sure if you like these that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. That would be great. That's my first shot at doing these sort of things. I'm also going to do a bunch of videos on photography, lighting, editing, that sort of thing. So all of that will come. I'm got about 30 years experience in teaching and about the same amount of years in photography. So I've also been teaching in photography for quite a few years. So I figured I'd come on here and just start sharing some of the information here as well. So let's take a look at this one. So what we have here is a little rocket, which I've got here. So I'm going to zoom in to just the payload. So inside my payload here, I've got the actual rocket, or the rover, right here, with a booster engine, which is what we're going to use to land this thing. That's the probe for it, and some thrusters. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly to Mars. This unit's going to flip over so that this is the bottom, and we're going to attempt to land or get close to land, and then I'm going to tip the rover and release. There's a docking port here. I also have an explosive bolt here, so if necessary I'll just explode this. I've got parachutes which I put on here just in case things are looking bad. I'll pop the parachutes, try to bring it in to land on the wheels here. And we've got some thrusters, ion thrusters down here to give myself some thrust as well. It's got a docking port on this side, and it'll end up with a docking port on the top so I can attach stuff onto it in the future if I want to. And then we've got the rover wheels frame that it's stuck on, and it's got here and here it's got some solar cells so that it can keep itself powered. So if we take a look at just a basic rocket otherwise, I am using something besides. I believe that they're not in the other units, but I do have the purchased one, so I'm not sure if all of this is in the basic. To be honest, I don't remember what was all in the basic components now, but or the ones that come with the free version of it. But I did buy the upgrade because it's got so much cool stuff in here. So let's give it a shot, see if we can get it to Mars. So this one I've saved it away. Okay, always save my blueprint, so I saved this one always as rover version 2. And let's go with that. Now this is unmanned. This is a completely unmanned system. It's just got, right up at the top here, it's got a probe control for running the rocket, and then once we get down, or once we disconnect, then this probe is going to take over, and then the lunar has a probe itself. So they're all 3 different computer bases that are going to be sitting there to control this thing. Okay, so what I've done with this as well is I've created a staging process. So the first thing it's going to do is start the 3 engines. Once I've got takeoff and these side engines die, I'm going to blast them off. Then I will disconnect to go to the second stage, fire up this engine, and then at the same time, and I just noticed that, oh, I know why it's not on there anymore, because I made a modification. So at the same time, on this one I'm going to say let's disconnect that, or disconnect that, do that. Let's go in the other order because I think that would be safer. It's always good to disconnect before you thrust your engines. So do that. I'm going to turn on, oops, sorry, let me just fix this one again. So do this, turn on this, and open the fairings to get rid of that. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick save on this because I did just make a save. So Mars. And I could do it after I get there because you will be back at this when you go back to the screen anyway. Okay, let's launch. It says no heat shield. That's okay. Don't need one for what we're doing. So there we go. I'm just going to say take the throttle all the way up. Hit this one to start the staging. So that'll turn on the engines and then fire my thrusters. And we've got enough lift on this. There's no problem. It'll scoot on up there. And it's a beautiful looking probe there. It's got a rocket. It's got a lovely fairing on the top of it. So same approach that I normally do. You've seen me do this on other videos if you watched any of my other ones. So I'm going to slowly work the angle over to get myself a nice orbit path. Okay, we're climbing up there pretty fast. Let's see here. So we're good for 30 degrees, or for 60 degrees now. So there we go, 60 degrees. Things are starting to heat up a little bit because this would be the area of maximum stress, as they call them in SpaceX, but I'm not throttling down because we're a daring kind of people here. Okay, so I'm coming through the atmosphere, or projected to come there. Okay, and then as soon as we get to staging, boom, pop those two off. Now I'm just going to coast for a little bit. Okay, so we are now in space. So at this point, even though I'm going to drop that now. Okay, just for the fact that it's a little bit less mass, so it makes it easier for me to get the altitude I want. So again, standard sort of thing with this. I'm thrusting to try to get to the point where I will have an orbit. And I can see if it gets to the point where I'm starting to climb really fast, I can head more sideways. We're just about to run out of fuel on our next stage. Yeah, let's go pause for a sec. You get most efficient effect of the thrust if you're sitting at the highest approach. There we go. Coming out the other side, and we have low Earth orbit. Let's go to Mars. So we're gonna come out of this, find Mars, navigate to. Now we look again for the transfer window. So I'm just gonna, I know I'm in orbit, so I'm just gonna zip around until the Earth gets up to the transfer window. And again, you don't want to go right up to it, you want to get closer and then start just sneaking up on it, sort of thing. There we go. So as soon as we get it where it says we're good for transfer, I zoom in here, figure out where's my... There it is. So the transfer window is on the other side, so right behind me, so I gotta zip around. Okay. Make sure I'm pointing in the right direction. And we're not going to have much thrust before it dies off. In fact, we have hardly anything. Technically, I should just drop it. In fact, let's do that. See if there's any fuel in there. It's only 0.4. So, you know what we're going to do? We're going to stage. And it's going slowly because we're not under thrust yet. Just about. Okay, go. So, this is using the most efficient in-space thruster. That's why it's got the blue flame behind it there. And off we go. So, standard sort of thing now. We're just going to let it stretch out past the orbit of the moon, and then it'll stretch out past where we get to the gravitational effect of the Earth. And you can see it goes faster and faster and faster. So I'm just slowing it down a bit until I can easier control here. And again, once it gets where the dotted line disappears, that's where we're going to say we're getting close. Slow down a little bit more. Okay, dotted line has disappeared, so let's back out, go to Mars. So there's my approach coming in. Not too fast. Okay, so it tells me that I'm hitting, so I'm just going to give it a few seconds for that to pulse its way back. Okay, so there we go. So let's back out and turn off the motor and then just speed up. So now we're just going to get so that we can see the rocket come out. There it is. Going to Mars. It's nice that we can pass through this in a short time frame. Okay, slow it down because I've done it before where I've didn't slow it down fast enough and I end up shooting on right on past. End up going out the other side. Okay, so how close are we? Okay, we're still entering. We're too close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work the thrusters. You see I'm just pushing the bottom. I'm just working the thrusters to bring it back out a little bit. Don't want it in that close. When you're so far away, a tiny little move of the thrusters moves the rocket a good distance. So, little poof from the thrusters and off we go. Now, I'm going to go into here. I'm going to turn off those thrusters now because I don't want any sort of adjustments I do now to angle me back into hitting the surface. So I'm just going to spin around here. Get ready for where I need to slow down. Okay. And don't forget you're accelerating as you're coming in, so You want to keep an eye on that you don't go too fast. And I've had it before too, where I push the button thinking I'm hitting the slow down one, and then realize, yeah, no, I'm hitting the accelerate one. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust my angle a little bit. Not going this way because I can see where my thruster needs to line up that way. And then once I get to the point where I'm at the closest part of the approach, I'm going to hit the thruster and start slowing it down. And once again it starts to slow down, then it'll inject myself into an orbit. So there we go. So thruster is going full. Let's confirm that. Oops. Good to confirm. Thruster is now going full. You can see the orbit trajectory is changing. There it is. So there's the overall orbit. When you see those little flickers, that's where it's saying that, hey, you can enter into and land on one of the moons. And that's what I did when I did do the moon landings. I did on the moons of Mars. So captured into a low orbit, and I'm just going to park that for a sec. So just if I come into, there he is. Here's one of the ones that I put on this moon, and I just basically have the shield underneath it because it's the same probe I used for. I've got a probe on every moon, and I tried every planet, but Jupiter doesn't work so well with it. Jupiter's a gas, so it was kind of funny. Yeah. So let's go back. And we got to find ourselves here. Is that me? Yep, that's me. Okay. I assumed it was, because it's the current one that's there. Okay, so let's try to land this thing. So I'm just going to adjust my altitude a little bit here. Come around the other side. Like I said, I usually like to go to the closest side. Hit the reverse on it just to slow down a bit. So then my altitude is closer, because I never like to come in too fast. If you come shooting in on too steep of an angle, you tent peg. Been there, done that. So we don't want to do that. I want to get in close, get a nice orbit. That's why if you notice in all the things that they try to get you to do, it's always insert yourself into an orbit, insert yourself into an orbit. So that's what those are. Okay, so let's insert ourselves into a closer orbit. So you can see it coming in on the bottom. Okay, so there we go. Now we've got a nice approach there. I still have a good amount of fuel in my main rocket, but we're going to end up ejecting it in a bit here as soon as I slow down a little bit more. So first thing, save. This is always a good idea. It'd be nice if we could do this in life, right? So we're going to do a save so that we can come in there. Okay. So we are saved. Bringing in you can see on the bottom there, now entering the atmosphere at the bottom. Okay, so now it's a slow approach. that's going to eventually work its way down. And I'm going to just adjust my angle here a little bit. First thing I want to do before I do anything else is say transfer fuel to these other, oops, just making sure that they're all at full thrust, or full fuel. Because there's no use throwing away a rocket that has fuel if it still has fuel on board. Okay. So we're getting closer. I'm just going to make sure we're pointing in the right direction. Oops, I turned the rover wheel on. We don't want that, because the wheels will cause it to go into a spin. So let's hit the thruster again. So you can see there's my altitude I'm going to come in, or the angle. So that looks good. Let's get rid of this rocket. Now I'm going to go like sideways, eject, and then turn. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to click on this one, say switch to, and say goodbye. I'm going to plant that one because otherwise it might get in the way. So I'm going to go switch to, there we go. So I'm purposely supplying the colonists on Mars with some metal from that one, because it's shooting in right there. Let's switch to that, see how it's coming. There it goes. Gone. Maybe not environment, but instead of having something you crash into as you're coming to the moon or to Mars, I think that's better to get rid of it. Okay, so as soon as it gets near the upper atmosphere, it indicates that just turning on these rockets so I can slow her down a bit. How far in are we? Not very far yet. So I'm just going to let her drop for a bit until temperature starts to come up, and then I'll slow her down. Okay, let's slow down a bit here. Temperatures come up fast if you don't slow down fast enough. Hopefully, just tuck the gear up, just so they don't burn off on me too fast here. We might be coming in a little bit hot. Okay, they're coming back down. Whew. That's all right. We're coming in pretty fast though. We might have to hope for a good bounce. Parachute. We're going to try to slow ourselves down here. Oh, 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 and throttle off. And there's a there's a successful land. Any land you can walk away from is successful, right? So, and now I've got a thruster pack on the back of this rover here. So if we turn this on, you can see how we can thrust away like crazy. Okay, so let's get rid of this guy off the back here. Before I do anything else though, let's transfer the fuel. Okay, just making sure all of our fuel tanks in the front are filled up. Mars's gravity is not that hard, so I figured we had a good chance of surviving that rough landing that we did there. But I'm glad we had the parachute, because that, I'm sure, helped us quite a bit. As long as you're below 2,500 meters, then you can eject the parachute. And we still got a spare one, if we wanted it. So I'm going to disconnect that, raise this, and now let's turn on. Let's turn off the thrusters. Turn on the wheels, and let's see if we can drive away. Oh, we've hooked the rocket. Let's try just to shake it off. Try it again. No. Oh, I see, this guy's still, the rocket is still thrusting. That's interesting. I'm going to switch to this. Watch this. So, come on, rocket, you can do it. There, that's a... Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That might have been bad news. I think I destroyed my solar cells. Oh no! Okay, well, let's do this. This guy's gonna have to just run on fuel and then be done. So I'm gonna turn on his engines, turn off his wheels. See if we can get enough thrust to get him moving. Trying to get this thing off the top of it yet. There we go. And we don't need the thrusters on if we're... There we go. We have a rover. He's crippled, but we'll try again. So, good enough for this one. We will try again with a different one.